So what does it mean to be the trails manager? Talk to our listeners about like what does a day in the life of Jackson Wolf look like?
Sure. So it's a lot of things, right? So working with the crews, getting them lined out on projects, and then also designing and creating a lot of those projects. Helping take it from just an idea and putting some pin flags in the ground and then setting the crews forth to kind of make those things happen.
Well, it's interesting. Trails isn't just something that you can just go, well, I want to go there. There's a lot of science to it. And as an individual that's got a degree in soil science, I'm reminded of the topography and typology of the soil and roots, when we talk about different tree species. And, it was really interesting of, what in some people's minds made a good trail. And let's talk about the Gorge first, the Gorge project, which is, sure, I think by far of the 107 years here, it rivals probably. And nobody knows where we're talking, it's in Brecksville and it's in the Gorge area. And it's awesome.
Yeah, that was a beautiful project to be a part of. And also just a really complex and interesting project as well. Because all those stones for the steps in the gorge we had to bring in, and a lot of those were brought in via highline, which is more or less, we took the rocks, picked them up in the air and floated them down in the gorge and then started building our steps one by one. So logistically, it was a huge challenge, but of course we overcome it. That's what the trails crew does. And we made in my opinion, one of the most beautiful trails in the parks.
It was interesting. For those who don't know that, each year the leadership team tries to go on at least a park tour, 1 to 2 a year. And so we'll go by reservation. So we'll be in Hinckley or North Chagrin. And some of our team have dubbed them survivor tours because we've had to either climb up mountains or cut across the Chagrin River or others. But, this one in particular that we're talking about in Brecksville, the day that we were hiking from basically Harriet Keeler, down to basically Route 82, all you could hear was people on the bottom, and our signs basically said, "Closed, do not enter, do not enter." And so what do? I hop over the fence and start walking down the side of the hill. And, there's like 35 people at the bottom. I'm just like, well, this is one of the most beautiful places of the park district. Why aren't we doing something that is better and more befitting of what we do? And I would argue that it is by far one of the coolest trail projects we've ever done. Not to be outdone by My Mountain. Tell us a little bit about the project that we just most recently opened.
My Mountain was a trail that's existed for quite some time.
And it's not really a mountain. It's kind of a misnomer, but it's one of our tails, right? It's one of our tails.
Yeah. So it's existed for quite some time, but anyone who's hiked there knows that it's pretty much muddy all year round. So last year we took the trail from being on the flat ridge top where it just holds water all year long, and then brought it down onto the ridge sides to where we call like a drainable edge, where you can start to shed that water off so it's not as muddy year round. And we turned it into instead of it just being an out and back, it's now a loop trail. And then just made it a trail that's all weather. So you can go out there today after it just snowed. And it should be mostly dry out there. And it's wider. You can bring a stroller out there if you want to. We made it ADA accessible all the way to the overlook, which wasn't a thing, in previous years. So truly an incredible project that logistically was another interesting challenge, but it was fun nonetheless.
Let's talk about this benching. You talk a little bit about how we get the water to move, and it's an art and a science and it's a feel, right? So talk to me a little bit about what it means to bench a trail. And it's not necessarily something you sit on, but it's a technique that's used.
For sure. So when we go in and bench the trail, it's like we're carving into the hillside a shape, right? So the tread is what you actually walk on. And then we also create something called the back slope and also the down slope. So the back slope is just upslope of you where you're walking, and that allows water to sheet flow down and onto the trail and then across and over and then down onto the down slope. So you don't get that stagnant water, which creates mud, and then people widen the trail as they walk around the mud.
Talk about a little bit of the decommissioning work that some of our amazing volunteers do, and why do we do this process of decommissioning?
Absolutely. So Erica and her army of volunteers go out and decommission a lot of the trails, especially My Mountain as an example. Decommissioning the old trail, kind of giving that trail back to nature, decompacting the soil, the muddy areas, so that nature can regrow in those areas. We do a lot of decommissioning alongside of our projects, but also just in areas where there may be bootleg trails forming. Yeah, she'll go out and decommission a lot of those trails, decompact them and give them back to nature, so that we can keep users on our trails and impacting the resources around us a little bit less.
With us today is Jackson Wolf, and we're really talking trails, and we're really talking about the art of building trails. It's not just kind of all paved surface. It's really the art of building. Talk to me a little bit about what it meant to build the trail in Euclid, one of the original 9 reservations, and kind of some of the challenges that we had going into that project.
Yeah, so Euclid was fun. I thought getting to build those staircases up to the overlook there was truly a blast, and being able to get users on that side of the creek safely for the first time in a really long time was something near and dear to me. But then with that project, we brought users back over onto that side, bringing them up to that overlook, and I loved every bit of that project.
Let's talk a little bit about the work that you're currently doing. Where are you working, and what's the significance of this particular? This is a project near and dear to my heart because it's been a few years in the running, and some of these trails along the way, some of them make complete sense, and then others, like, you wonder, like, how did it end? Like here, and why can't I get like there?
For
so
sure.
talk to me about this trail.
Yeah.
And
so
where is it?
So we're at Byers Pond currently,
Which is in the Millstream Run Reservation, or Big Creek.
Big Creek. Yeah. It's kind of, they're all the same about it, that part. So originally Byers Pond was a trail. You walk back in the woods, there's a pond. The trail goes, I'd say 3/4 of the way around the pond and then just stops. So we're currently building a floating boardwalk across the pond to make that connection so that you can walk all the way across the pond. And we're utilizing old docks from Euclid Beach and bringing them over to Byers Pond to make that connection.
So really an adaptive reuse of something that we've already had. But again, I think it's one of those things where you kind of question, it's like, well, why did it end here? And then you realize that you kind of ran out of land. And so we found a very, very unique way of really completing that trail. But so tell me, what does it mean to you to be, the guy in the field, really designing these things and the flow of them, because you're also working in West Creek, one of the newer park reservations. And talk to me a little bit about the work that you're doing there and the significance of what we're trying to bring online.
The work at West Creek, I'm really excited about. So we're adding about 2.5 miles to the mountain bike trails there, with the intention of them becoming a NICA race course, which is the National Intergalactic Cycling Association, which gives kids an opportunity to race their mountain bikes. They have a league here in Ohio, and the furthest north they get is about around Zor. So we're going to be bringing a race course up to Northeast Ohio for the first time with these new trails, and I'm really excited about it. We're out there every day, kind of swinging hand tools, running excavators, chiseling rocks, making retaining walls, or armoring a section of trail.
What does it mean to armor? Talk to me about that.
Sure. So armoring a trail is generally where we know it's going to be wet. We'll bring in stones and chisel them so that they fit like little puzzle pieces on the trail, so that even if it is wet, it's still a firm surface. So you're not creating that kind of mud like you would have seen maybe at my mountain. You have a firm surface that you can walk on and know that you're not going to sink your boot halfway into the ground.
One of my favorite spots in the world is Rocky River Reservation. And we talked earlier in this podcast with Jackson about, the trails that start pretty narrow and then they widen. Talk to me a little bit about the work that we brought it in and the aggregate that was used on top of what I call, the hill, or the Fort Hill stairs, the top of it.
Yeah, for sure. So that was another, like you said, it was just like widening to the point where it was maybe like 40 feet wide in some areas. So bringing in that material really gives people that firm area to walk upon so that they're not tempted to kind of spread around and widen that trail and impact the vegetation around the trail. So we use our little track buggies to come up with the stone that we use on the trail and drop it down and tamp it in and create a better shape so that when water hits the trail, it sheds off either side, so that we ensure that it's never muddy.
So talk to me about the aggregate, because it's a kind of a unique special blend that has been created kind of over time.
Yeah. So we've tried a bunch of different things. And what we've really landed upon is this material called 304s. It's just the size of rocks. And it also has some dust inside of it as well. It's predominantly like a shale mix that's crushed up and also has some gravel chunks. And we found that it really locks together well along with shedding water off, which is both key because if you've seen in other places where aggregate is put down on a trail, it can get washed out really fast. And that's both a product of the material as along with the layout of the trail, right? If it's too steep, water's going to carry any material with it. So when we go into a place, we make sure that the grades aren't too steep on the trail so that the water doesn't just take all of that material away.
What are you hearing from the visitors when you're out in the woods? You know, what type of interactions or what's been the most unique interaction that you've had?
Sure. I mean, it's usually nothing but positivity. The public generally loves to see that we're putting back into these trails, right? And we do so often. And we try to spread the trail crew love out everywhere, right? We're a small team, but we try to get to all the parks. So overwhelmingly positive. They just usually can't believe that we're out there fixing their home trail or like what's their backyard trail.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of folks that, you know, they have their home park, they're aware of the rest of the system, but they kind of create it as like, you know, that's my park, that's my reservation. And, you know, ownership of the park district is really for everyone. We talk about the uses, we talk about our world-class zoo, our golf courses. You know, certainly I think there's something that's literally there for everyone. What projects are you most excited about coming up here in the future?
I'm really excited to get Palmerdale done, or like the new trail in West Creek. It's just seeing what's happened at the pump track at OEC and all the kids there that utilize it, being able to bring them into this next level of cycling is something I'm really, really excited about.
Very good. Well, with us today is Jackson Wolf, one of our artisans who is out building amazing trails in Cleveland Metroparks. Thank you so much for being our guest today on Tales and Trails, sponsored by KeyBank. And we look forward to seeing you out in the woods. Thank you, Jackson.
Yeah, thank you.